I'm Jenna, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a terrified alcoholic at the moment. I've been obsessed about the chef for a while, and I don't really know where to start. Like, I really want to start in the last year because so much has happened in this last year. But I guess that's not the beginning. And the book tells us to, share about what it was like. And around milestones, like, I often reflect about what it was like. It seems like another lifetime. Like, it seems like sometimes I'm talking about somebody else. Like, that stuff didn't really happen, but it did. And I think I don't think I need to explain it too much. I think we earn ourselves our spot in this room by with that empty feeling, that the chaos of active alcoholism, the disrupted families and relationships. I think I had multiple people tell me that my drinking wasn't normal, and I was in so much denial that I had, what I used to do was I used to just not hang out with those people anymore. And then I distinctly remember one of them, who she's still a friend now, she's been a lifelong friend, saying to me, she looked at me with utter disgust, and she was like, Jenna, your drinking is not normal. How you carry on is not okay. And I didn't take any of that on. I remember going, phew, she's old for her time. She's going to end up being one of those people in a midlife crisis whose life falls to shit. Because there's nothing wrong with how I behave. At my age, everyone does that. And everyone didn't do that. I just hung out with people who did that. I've seen lots of people from the active days coming in and out of these rooms. I've seen them come in and out of treatment centres, and I can't say I've been surprised that any of them have ended up, in this circle with me. So that's just what I did. If you didn't approve of how I behaved, we just didn't hang out because you were judgmental and you were an asshole. So cheers. And of course, my behaviour got worse. And so at the end of my active days, I had very few friends that would actually hang out with me. I remember I had one of the few. If people heard that we were coming, they would leave. He found himself in a treatment centre, and that was my first kind of exposure of any kind of a program, was watching them get better. And then I had another friend who, it was kind of him and I left at the end. No one really, I don't think we really wanted to hang out with other people either, because we found them quite judgy of our behaviour. And they also ended up in a treatment centre, and it was my first experience of that attraction rather than promotion. Because if somebody had told me, or people did tell me, my drinking wasn't okay, and I wouldn't have any of it. I always used to say, if you lived my life and if you had my family, you would also drink. But the reality of that was that was all made up. I come from a reasonably stable family. Not any issues. Some of the issues that were there and that I spoke about, I used to speak about my absent father, my dad who was never there. The fact is, my dad phoned me every Sunday and I wouldn't take his calls, so he stopped eventually. The chaos that I believed was my life was all made up. It wasn't real. But anyway, when that friend, we actually lived together at the time, when that friend found recovery, I used to visit him in the treatment centre, and when he came out, he didn't have a car, so I found myself sitting in these meetings as Jenna, the supporter, for about 6 months. I used to introduce myself as Jenna, the supporter, and people thought it was quite wonderful because I was so supportive. And what was actually happening in those 6 months was was I was learning that, like, you know, people talk about like this life beyond your wildest dreams. I didn't know life could be any different. Like, I didn't know that there was a different option. Like, I thought that how I lived was normal. And anyway, eventually, I sat in these meetings long enough, and the one day something just, I don't know. I sat and I went, oh my God. And you know, we speak about how looking at similarities rather than differences is so important. And that was when the penny dropped. When I looked at the similarities, I remember it was a Friday night masquerade meeting, and the guy who was sharing didn't have a story. It was very different to mine in terms of like I came into recovery, I had my job, I had probably one of the prettiest houses I've lived in. I had all that stuff still intact, but and he hadn't. I think he lived in a park for a while. And I don't know what shifted. I can only leave that to God, or put it down to God, but something shifted that night, and I related to all the behavior stuff that he spoke about, like all the rock bottom feelings, and like I felt like it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't easy, but it was simple for me, because I'd met people in the rooms, I had contact numbers, and I remember, of course, that Friday night I got home, and I was devastated, because I didn't really want to be an alcoholic, because what would people think? What would my family say? What would all my so-called friends say? Which, by the way, was nothing. I think one of them, when I told them I was coming into recovery, asked me why I was telling them. None of them really stuck around. The friends that I used to run around and say, they like my family, we'd do anything for each other, anything except stop using or drinking, but now I've got sidetracked about where I was. I told Monique before this that I was terrified that my brain would switch off, and here we are. Came into recovery, friends disappeared. That's what they did. That night after that meeting, I came home and I prayed for the first time in a very long time. I had done the whole religious thing, and it didn't work for me. Like I remember I used to pretend a lot. I used to pretend and forge a relationship that I didn't understand, and I didn't really like it either. I just wanted to fit in with that crowd of people. But anyway, that Friday night I went home and I prayed to something, and the next day I remember saying to my flatmate too, who was obviously in recovery, can I have your step working guide? But like I didn't really want to talk about it, because I was, at that point I had really realized like I needed to be here, and I was terrified someone was going to tell me that I couldn't be. So like I didn't want to talk about it. I dropped him off at work, and as he was about to close the door, I was like, by the way, I'm going to go home, can I have your step working guide? And he was like, I think you should phone someone in the fellowship. So that's what I did. I dropped him off, and I think I cried all morning. It took me till about lunchtime to phone her. And I always cry in shares, so this is no surprise. But I'm super grateful, because she appeared here at the door today, and it just that like the gratitude for it, and like anyway. So I picked up the phone, and I remember just crying and saying, I think I have a problem. And I thought that she was going to like scrutinize my life and tell me how I didn't really belong here. And all she said to me was like, do you want to come to a meeting? And she met me at a meeting, and I went to my first meeting, and I think I sobbed my whole way through that meeting. And there was a lot of like, how am I going to live? How am I going to tell anyone? How am I going to I think like part of it was, how am I going to get away with this without anyone knowing? Because that was what I did. Like my whole life was based on all the stuff that I had to get away with without people knowing. And for the first time, it was something that I didn't have to do. I eventually told my parents. My dad knew that things were unraveling. My dad had phoned me a few weeks before I came into recovery and said, no matter what it is, a friend of his had got into a lot of debt and committed suicide due to this disease. So, his friend's daughter. And I lied to him that phone call. Well, I said to him, Dad, I forever need all this money because do you know how much groceries have gone up? Do you know how much toilet paper costs? That was the route I went. And obviously he knew that things weren't great. So my dad was super supportive. My mum to this day will tell me to shh because you sound like you're a real alcoholic. To this day, sorry, so gross with the mask on. To this day, she'll say that she's very much in denial about. I don't know where she thinks all that money that she used to give me went to, and shame. She actually said to me a while ago that I've changed so much thanks to Stelio, and I was a bit like. I was like, thanks, Mum. I've given up that fight because. It's been the one thing in my life that I haven't had to have my mom's approval of. I was so desperate that it didn't matter to me what my mom thought. And that's kind of had to be something, like I've gone through stages where like I really wanted to understand and she doesn't, and it doesn't matter. Like no one has to understand or approve of me being here. Okay. My first year of recovery, and I say I wanted to start my share with this year because I feel like this last year has been just like my first year. My first year of recovery, I learned how to vaguely function as an adult. Something that I've just had it again, and I always have such gratitude, and it's something so silly, but I learned how to do things like take responsibility for my own stuff and like buy my own windscreen wipers. Like I remember being so chuffed with myself that I'd gone into the shop and bought windscreen wipers, and I didn't pick up the phone and phone my dad and tell him how much they cost and hope that he'd put the money in my account. And like I bought new windscreen wipers the other day, and it's a very big joy in my life when I go and buy new windscreen wipers. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I believe that's why, it just built a foundation in my recovery. I didn't have time to worry about old people, places, playthings, because I was always with people in recovery, and I learned to ask the hows instead of the whys in my first year. Along the way I did forget about that until this last year, and it brought me to my knees. But it's amazing when you ask how, despite what you think other people are going to say in this fellowship, how much you can actually learn. My second and third year of recovery got real. All of a sudden, it wasn't like, oh look, Jenna's still sober. I feel like I kind of really had to start living life. Like it wasn't just oh shame she's learning, and oh shame she's just staying sober. I kind of had to really start like learning how to be an adult and how to be self-supporting and be on my own 2 feet and take responsibility. In my fourth year, somewhere along the line, I lost my footing, and I changed sponsors and chose a sponsor purely based on what everyone else would think and who everyone else thought would be a good idea. I again forged a relationship with God, which I have learned I cannot do in this program if I want those promises. But I don't know if I was too scared or too arrogant, maybe a bit of both, to admit that to anyone, you know. And I ticked all the boxes. I ticked all the boxes of, ticked all the boxes of coming to meetings. I spoke to my sponsor. God knows, I spoke to my sponsor every day, 3 times a day. In fact, I went to more than one meeting a day. It was kind of the start of lockdown that, things started to get really painful. And it had nothing to do with lockdown. In fact, lockdown probably reminded me that there was God. I ended up, I hit a rock bottom that was probably worse than my first one. I felt very alone, and feeling alone in these rooms is a very lonely place to be. I was genuinely suicidal, I didn't get it because I was I'm speaking to my sponsor, I'm going to meetings, and I even break tissues because this is just how it goes. And I didn't get it, and I thought I was working such a good program, and I started to wonder if I wasn't maybe an unfortunate that the book speaks about. Anyway, one day I went and had coffee with a friend, and I was able to be honest with her and tell her all exactly that. I remember just saying, I don't know what to do, and she said to me, I think you need to find yourself a sponsor who you want, who I forgot all those fundamentals, someone that you connect to, they have what you want, so I did that. And I was so terrified, I was terrified that, I don't know, and probably from my third and my fourth year, I had so much fear of what the fellowship thought of me and what the fellowship thought of my recovery, that I lost honesty in God. There was no honesty and there was no God in my recovery. It was all about what everyone thought. And I found myself a sponsor that I connected to. I got cracking on the step work, and it became so blatantly obvious in the first few questions of that first step how far I had come, moved away from what's in that book. It had become this pretend show, and there was just nothing real anymore. And the freedom from just getting honest and going, I have no idea what to do, was incredible, and I'm so grateful for it. These are grateful tears, I promise. Very grateful tears. Because I look at where I was this time last year, and I shouldn't be here. It's just a reminder of God's grace, really. And then, so much has happened this year in just getting honest. As silly as I used to phone my sponsor and be like, I'm so angry, but I'm doing this and this, and I have so much compassion, and I'd give a list of things that I should feel or think, but I didn't think then. And so my sponsor was unable to help me. People are unable to help me when I'm portraying that I know all the answers. And so I've had a lot of that. That's why I say this year has been a lot like my first year. Like I've had a lot of that of just going, I'm angry. Tell me what you think. Give me your suggestions. Tell me what to do next. Instead of this like constant, yeah, but, you know, having a conversation and a suggestion and going, yeah, but I tried that before and this happened, or, oh, I know this person so well that I know what she's going to say. Like I've had to stop doing all of that and just put one foot in front of the other and do what I'm told. And I have that serenity that I had in my first year again. Like I've got that hope and the excitement about recovery and the excitement about life. You know, which I somehow lost along the way. I've also done things that like I didn't do for a long time because I was worried what everyone thought of me. I've been to therapy. I don't say that therapy replaces this program. In fact, I was only able to be open-minded and willing to do that because of this program. Like I'd been to therapy before and it was very different. You know, going sober and open-minded, and it was incredible. It was an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful that I could put my ego aside and do that. I've gone into another fellowship as well. Again, it doesn't replace this at all, but it's been vital to my growth this year. And I'm just, it's just been such a relief to just be honest and have that honesty, open-mindedness and willingness, and like really have it, not just talk about it anymore. I think I've cried the whole way through. Yeah, I think I might end it there, otherwise I'm just going to end up waffling and talking nonsense. So I'm super, super grateful to be here today. Like like I've just been so reminded lately of God's grace. I'll finish off with this, but we did, I didn't know her, Sal was somebody close to Star, who took her own life due to this disease a while ago, and it was just a reminder, like along the way there've been a few of those, and they're unfortunate that book talks about, and I think the only difference between them and me is God's grace, because I don't know, I didn't do anything different to deserve to be here more than them. It's just, I guess, God's grace, and I'm just so super grateful for that. At the moment, the last few months I've been really connected to that. So, thanks for letting me share.